Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. Last time we talked about the quarterback situation, a ongoing conversation that seems to happen every single year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every single year of this podcast, we talked about a new quarterback opportunity. And while we think that the quarterback is going to remain the same for this upcoming season in 2026, the offense as a whole just simply has to look different if the Steelers want to be any better than they were in the last 3 seasons. And I think we can all agree on that the Steelers offense at times is good, but it is not nearly consistent enough to be an actual playoff caliber offense. So in this episode, David and I, we're going to talk through just the offense as a whole. We want to get some opinions, especially on the wide receivers, because we know that's a big need. We're going to look at some things going on in the draft as well as free agency. Interestingly enough, I think this free agent class is one of the deeper classes that I've seen in a while, but it's also just a very interesting class, and I'm not so sure how I feel about it personally. But as far as getting started goes, what do you say are the biggest needs as far as the offense goes? Because I'm looking down our free agent losses for this upcoming season. The only real key losses that I can identify are Isaac Samalu, Kenneth Gainwell, Calvin Austin, and Connor Hayward. And even those last two that I mentioned, maybe they're not as key as I might have been making them out to be. But those top two, Isaac Samalu and Kenneth Gainwell. When I list those Steelers free agents that are pending, what does that kind of originally register with you, David?
Absolutely. I think that when it registers with Samalu, I think that one of the things that I think we were in desperate need of, I don't know if I would say desperate need, but something I do think we are in need of is, a better O-line. And interestingly enough, it's not in years past where it's I feel like we, in years past, had zero pieces to make our O-line good. And it's right now, I do think that some of our starters can be really good and can play really good. And I think Samalu is one of those guys. So I would put him on the list of trying to retain, trying to get him back. But if he were to leave, it's not a backbreaker. On the other hand, if Kenneth Gainwell goes somewhere else, I do think that might be a backbreaker because I think that our offense, and this could change depending on what we do in the draft or free agency as far as wide receiver goes. But I think one of the main focal points of our offense should be Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. And without him, obviously, I'm not going to rule out Caleb Johnson because of 1 or 2 bad plays. But for this upcoming year, I still don't think that he's going to be a guy that can be a number 2. So I think we absolutely must have Kenneth Gainwell.
I agree wholeheartedly with both of those things. I think Samalu is going to be a priority to get back because I think also with the offensive line, I think the continuity that we've gotten to have over the last year or so with having Fatanu in there, with having Broderick Jones even on the left side, with having McCormick and Frazier in there, it seems like the more they play together, the better they are. And that might be one of those things that maybe there are better options or maybe there are other opportunities that you could do to fill that left guard that left guard spot. But to have all 5 of them back, especially if Aaron Rodgers is coming back too, I think that would be the best case scenario. And it seems like Samalu, he's a little bit older, but he's going to demand just a little bit more money around that $10 million mark, I believe, in free agency. I think that's a worthy cause to bring him back just to keep the continuity with our offensive line because I think I'll pose this to you. Do you think that that's a reason why it's been on the upswing? Because I think for years past, it's no, the offensive line isn't good. But with this group of guys, it seems like it's at least trending upward. That's at least my opinion. What do you think about that?
I think that's a really good observation because I think especially when it was not good was, we had so much just no consistency, a lot of guys going in and out and names we didn't recognize. But over the past 2 years, we've really seen that consistency, especially with Zach Frazier, Samalu coming in. McCormick's been a pretty big key figure. I'm blanking on who our right tackle is right now.
Fatanu.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fatanu, I really like him. So I think keeping Samalu back. And I also think that Broderick Jones, when hopefully he can come back healthy out of an injury, I think he really, before he got hurt, was starting to prove himself. I think that he kind of realized that it was all right, Like, this is kind of it. Like, you either show up or you're done. We're not moving your position again. And he was showing up before he got hurt. So I do like bringing continuity back. And again, a bonus if Aaron Rodgers comes back, like he knows these guys. Roger Jones, maybe not as much because of the injury, but he works with these guys. They understand his cadence and his calls. And I think that that's just a good reason to have that consistency.
All right, now switching back to Kenneth Gainwell, which you said it's like, this is an absolute must, and I couldn't agree more. It's an absolute must for me. I don't care what it takes. You have to have him back. And interestingly, he's only projected to make about $3 million in free agency, but with what he did on the field, I just can't imagine that that's anywhere near the number he's going to make. Because I think you could very well argue that he has running back one capabilities based on what we saw in his abbreviated time, splitting time with Jaylen Warren. But I mean, this has to be one of those where you get him back at all costs, right?
Absolutely. And I think that I would be totally fine with paying a little more money than, people think he should be making, because I think that he deserves it and he earned it. And you're right. Like, he did show running back one capabilities in a couple games. And so I think that, and like just the versatility of him in the receiving room, like Jalen Warren is pretty versatile. Like, he can be effective in the receiving game, but I don't think that's his like niche. I think that's Kenneth Gainwell's niche, is like just being an absolute threat, like just another wide receiver. So I think that having him back would really just, it really messes with defenses because both these guys are guys that you kind of have to prep for, and kind of like when we had Le'Veon Bell and James Conner's rookie year, it's like they ran so differently that it was hard when a different guy was in that you were thinking, because they run differently. And so you can't play them the same. And I think that is just so beneficial. And I think that was, I mean, almost all of our offensive success came from that duo. And so I think we need it again. Absolutely.
I think we're pretty well set on that. Now, a couple of other names that I mentioned. No, now here's the interesting part. So there's 3 wide receivers that are pending free agents: Scotty Miller, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Calvin Austin III. I think the both of us would hone in on one of those names specifically, just based on our history and the fact that we like him. But what do we think about those 3 names? Like, is this just the time to overhaul everything?
I would say, for the most part, yes. Scotty Miller, for sure. Get it. You can go. Marcus Valdez-Scantling, you can go. Calvin Austin, I only want him back if we commit to making him the number 1 kick and punt returner. And that's his primary role. And maybe he's a wide receiver 4, maybe a 3. But I think that he has shown that he can be a really good returner, and he's got that speed. And so if we could get him back cheap, and that's where he lives, and it's like, all right, when we're going 4 receivers deep, you come in, or 5 receivers, you're coming in. But I don't think he should be our wide receiver 2, especially, and probably not even wide receiver 3. I think he should be a substitutional role, but I would love him to be our primary returner.
I think that's a great breakdown. And I think, in my opinion, I was kind of straying towards, honestly, just let him walk. But for that reason alone, the fact that he is a threat in the return game, I do think that's a good point. Now, with that, again, like you pointed out, he can't be given too much of a role. And I think that's the problem, is that the Steelers over the last couple of years, they've just tried to fit a square peg in a round hole with Calvin Austin. And as much as we love Calvin Austin, he's just not anything more than a wide receiver 3. So with that, the option is you bring him back in that diminished role, or you just let him walk entirely. But I do like the idea of bringing him back for the sole purpose of being a return guy. And I think he likes Pittsburgh. I can't speak for him there. I think if he goes somewhere else, he'll probably succeed. But the big question is now, so this is all the little nitty-gritty stuff. But the elephant in the room is we have a massive hole at wide receiver 2. And frankly, our wide receiver 1 needs a wide receiver 2 to be a wide receiver 1 himself. So what are we supposed to do with this wide receiver 2? Because I see a few options, and I'll list them here. One of them is we go out and we get another blue chip guy in free agency to put out on the other side of DK Metcalf. Whether they're similar in style or not, that's another conversation. But the other option is we draft another one, which is personally what I would lean towards. Here's what I'm going to do, David. I'm going to list the wide receiver free agents that are pending for this upcoming season, and I just want to get your takes on these. I'm just going to go down the list, and I'll get your reactions. One by one. First up, Tyreek Hill.
Absolutely not.
All right, we're on the same page there. Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is the guy. Okay. Now, and you, I know you've looked into the draft class a little more than me, but the top receivers I've seen so far aren't really like necessarily big bodied. And I think we need another big body guy on the outside. And I think Mike Evans, this might be his last year or last 2 years, and he was coming off an injured season. Like I think you could get him super cheap. You match up the veteran Aaron Rodgers with veteran, Mike Evans, obviously. And I think that could be very beneficial just to add some depth. And it's like, you can get some great plays out of him. So from what I saw free agent wise, he's one that I'm like, that's sneaky. Maybe mark that because he's a big bodied guy, but I know that you might have someone in the draft that's big bodied, young, and we could get, well.
You are correct in assuming that. I will put a little niche next to Mike Evans' name on here just to keep him in mind. Walking down next, this guy absolutely blew us away in the wild card game, Christian Kirk.
No, I think that no. Again, I'm very like we've been kind of going after the same guy in free agency, the just a little bit shorter, not like we need to get away from that. We have enough of that. Let's go with someone more like DK Metcalf.
Gotcha. Now, here's an interesting name, and we actually talked about him this time last year, Deebo Samuel.
Now, that is interesting. I don't know what to think about him because he didn't have the best year in Washington, but no one did in Washington. And I would say that the only reason I'd consider him is if somehow we miss Kenneth Gainwell. And I think that I don't think he's as good as Kenneth Gainwell was, but he could be a cheaper option to fill that role if Kenneth Gainwell's like, you know what? These guys are going to give me more money. I'm going to go here. So that would be the only reason I would consider him. But other than that, no.
Okay. I like that breakdown, though. That's an interesting little caveat to that conversation. I like that a lot. Now, the next one, similar type of name, not exactly, but came from a similar place, Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings is interesting. I'll say that. I feel like he's picked up a lot of steam this year. I feel like he was a guy where it was like he was just like that third guy in San Francisco for a very long time. And I was like, all right, like, yeah, he's fine. He makes plays. He threw a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And this year, though, like Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy, like have talked so highly of him. So I don't know how I feel about him. I'd still lean towards no, lean towards draft. But if we were to like pursue him, I would be optimistic.
Okay. He's an interesting name for me, too, just because, like you said, he's kind of one of those under the radar guys that his stock might be just rising a lot in the last year or so. It's projected that he's going to be one of the most highly regarded wide receivers in this free agent class. And I believe, based on the projections that I saw on that one specific website, he would make the most money out of any wide receiver in this free agent class, which is dumbfounding to me that it's a guy named Juwan Jennings and, you've got guys like Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel on there. But for that very reason, it's like those guys are trending downward, but Juwan Jennings is most definitely trending upward. So it's an interesting little conversation to have,
Absolutely. And I think thinking about it, a little bit of a word of caution, because obviously, like, I feel like he hasn't been above the average, for most of his career, except maybe this year. I haven't even looked at his stats, but Sam Fran talked about it like he was above average. But players always play their best in a contract year. And so this is a contract year for him. So the only word of caution is like, okay, he's playing for money here. He's going to get money. Is he going to play the same? I don't know. So it's just something to think about.
Okay. Now, here are 3 really interesting names that I wanted to get your opinion on. The first one, and all of these are fairly young. These are guys that are largely on the expiring end of their initial contracts. The first one is Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants. What do you think about that one?
Oh, that's tough because he literally is the exact, like what I was just saying about Calvin Austin, what I was just saying about these other guys is like the archetype I want to stay away from. But I mean, he's tempting. Like he makes some splashy plays. I think that he would be I don't know. Do you think he would be an improvement over Calvin Austin?
I would say absolutely. I would say that
Yeah.
pretty confidently.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would like if he was our wide receiver 3 plan, I would like that.
Okay. Now, here's the problem is he would be probably 3 times more expensive than Calvin Austin. And do you think you're getting 3 times better production than Calvin Austin? In that regard, I'd say no, probably not. And that's probably the big reason why I would stay away from that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And like it's hard to say because he's been in such a rough environment as the Giants, but I feel like he's had a decent amount of time and a decent amount of guys throwing the ball that he could have had a breakout year, especially this year with Malik Neighbors being out all year and he didn't necessarily break out. So I think that he's someone too that I would rather spend a lot of that money somewhere else.
Okay. This next one is an interesting archetype based on what I kind of want for our wide receiver too.
Okay.
And again, this name is going to throw you for a loop when you hear it. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
Alec Pierce from the Colts.
I like it.
Oh, baby, you like it.
I'll be honest. I like him. I mean, I feel like every highlight from him is a 60-yard touchdown. I've seen him make contested catches. I literally today at work was watching top 100 plays of the year, and there was a few plays of him on there just having some great plays. And I'm like, man, I like him. And I think that he's not the archetype that I'm talking about. And I would love to hear your breakdown of him.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I would say that part of the conversation we had last year was we need a route runner on the other side of, at that time, we were thinking it was going to be George Pickens. If you take George Pickens and you insert DK Metcalf, I don't think we're getting anything too different. As far as their archetypes go, they're one-on-one guys. They can high point. They have some speed that they can work after the catch. Neither of them are great route runners, though. What I see in Alec Pierce is a word that you used last year, and I love the word technician. I see him much more as a technician that can run some sneaky good routes and can really break off for some big catches on the other side of what I'm assuming is going to be our main deep threat target in DK Metcalf. So with that, I think that if you can take the safeties and the corners looking at one guy and you have this sneaky little Alec Pierce on the other side who has the same type of capabilities, I think it could be an explosive offense if Aaron Rodgers can find a connection with the two of them. And again, I say Aaron Rodgers as if we're going to sign him back. I'm pretty darn sure that we're going to sign him back, and you can go back and listen to our last episode to kind of get that understanding. But again, this is just my mindset right now. So Alec Pierce, again, when I saw that name, I'm like, ooh. And the fact that you also were like, I like that. That's an interesting little connection that we've got here. So I don't know what to do with it, but I'm writing it down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's like he's someone that kind of slid my radar, but yeah, like what you said, route runner is someone we desperately need, and he's played an extraordinary role with kind of Michael Pittman being their deep threat guy, and like he's filled in super well in Indianapolis, kind of in that number 2 spot, and I think that like. I don't know anything about the guy, but the way he plays comes off as very blue collar like, and I think that that's something that we need to get back to. Is enough of these celebrities? Let's go back to blue collar Pittsburgh, and I think that he could fit the mold really well.
I love what you just said about the blue collar aspect, and I couldn't agree more about that. And part of that is, especially even like when I'm looking down into the draft and even at these other free agents, you look at names like Tyreek Hill, it's like, yeah, that's a celebrity. I don't want any part of any more celebrities. You look at a guy like Mike Evans, a guy that has perennially been under the radar, but has just produced every single year at a consistent rate. That guy's not a celebrity. He's just a producer. He goes to work, he gets his lunch pail, and he just goes and does it. Again, like you said, Alec Pierce, he's right in that same conversation. I couldn't agree more about that. That's a great breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what we need more of, and I'm hoping it'll be interesting to see kind of in the draft who those guys are that we want to target more than some other people. I've already heard of some wide receivers who are ruffling feathers with their interviews in the draft. So definitely it's like, we already have one guy who's going to be doing that. So let's steer clear.
The entire reason that they traded George Pickens was because they knew that it was impossible for him and DK Metcalf to be in the same locker room and Heinz Field not just absolutely implode on itself. We just can't do that again,
Right. And I mean, it's, I don't know how we do it because somehow Antonio Brown and Juju Smith Schuster seemingly imploded. And Juju Smith Schuster is like the most positive NFL celebrity I think I've ever seen. So I don't know how the heck that happened.
Yeah. I literally just today, I watched a little comedic documentary on the history of Steelers wide receivers being absolute head cases and divas. And it all started with like Plaxico Burress in the early 2000s. And it comes all the way up to DK Metcalf. There literally has not been a period of time in our lifetimes that a Steelers wide receiver has not been an absolute diva. You go from Plaxico Burress to Santonio Holmes to AB to Juju to Deontay Johnson to Chase Claypool. And now it's like, okay, we got DK Metcalf, who like is right there with him. Oh, and I forgot George Pickens in there too. It's like literally the entirety of our lifetime, the wide receiver has been an absolute head case on this team. And that's the whole point is like, we can finally start to get away from that. Go to these blue collar guys, get rid of the divas, and just start fresh. I know we have DK for the next 3 or 4 years or whatever. Just find a way to put him on an island and not think about him in the diva aspect of things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that we need to find our Heinz Ward that's going to just be like, I'm going to show up and get the job done for this number one guy. And that even goes back to the 70s with Lynn Swann and John Stallworth, because Lynn Swann was definitely more of the like, I want to be the number one, I want to make the plays. And John Stallworth was very much just like, I'm just going to come and play football. It's like, we need someone who's going to balance out this diva and just say, I'm going to come in and play football.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Now, here's the last free agent that I wrote down. Romeo Doubs from the Green Bay Packers.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. My wife wouldn't be happy about it because she can't stand his little extra padding helmet because he just looks so goofy with that thing. But nah. I mean, I'm like, take it or leave it. I'm not even take it. I'm just like, he's fine. I don't think that we need him, honestly.
So Kaylee's not a fan of the Guardian cap, and you're saying he's not moving the needle, so just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right.
What are your thoughts?
I'm right there with you. I think he just doesn't move the needle enough, and he's talented, but again, I think there are different and better options personally. So I would go in a different direction.
Yeah,
all right.
I agree.
So I wrote down Mike Evans. I wrote down Juwan Jennings with a little question mark, and I wrote down Alec Pierce. I feel like those three guys kind of fit the persona that we're looking for this wide receiver too. That they're these under the radar guys that can kind of just come in and get the job done. They're independent assets, I think, too, because I feel like sometimes with George Pickens and DK Metcalf, it's like, okay, somebody always has to have their eyes on him. Somebody always has to be monitoring them. Whereas these three guys, it's like, they just show up and they do it. And they don't need like somebody holding their hand. They don't need the pacifier. They just come in and they do their job. And for wide receiver too, specifically with what we're trying to do with this offense, I think that's the archetype that we're looking for personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like those three guys as potential options and like in the free agent pool, and we'll see kind of what moves are made once it opens up.
All right. Let's transfer now to the draft because, like I kind of mentioned early on, this draft is very top-heavy with wide receivers, and the talent pool is exceptional with first-round wide receivers. I'm going to list 3 names, and I'm going to see your opinions on them. I'll list them all at once, and then we'll kind of dive into each one of them individually. I've got 3 wide receivers that I've written down for some possible first-round selections for the Steelers. And again, when's the last time the Steelers took a wide receiver in the first round? I don't know. Frankly, I don't know if it's ever happened. It's one of those things where it doesn't happen very often, very similar to the Green Bay Packers, who for a very long time had Aaron Rodgers. So interesting juxtaposition there. I got 3 wide receivers. I've got Mekhi Lemon from USC. I've got KC Concepcion from Texas A&M. And I've got Malachi Fields from Notre Dame. These 3 guys are interesting because Mekhi Lemon and Concepcion are fairly similar in size and their output. You could kind of say, okay, these are some slot guys that kind of have a similar play style. Now, Malachi Fields is literally just DK Metcalf 2.0. This is just like, okay, here we go. DK's on one side, Fields is on the other side. Have fun, defense. Figure it out. And again, it seemed like you liked that idea to try to find somebody that has that type of archetype on the other side of DK Metcalf. What do you think about that in terms of just like the overall the strategy with what we're trying to build with this offense?
Yeah, I think that one with Makai Lemon, I did like randomly this showed up. I did hear from like some of the combine scouts that he bombed his combine interviews. So I don't really know like what that means or how you do that, but it's just an interesting thing to note. And I think that kind of like what you were predicting is right, that I would go with Malachi Fields and build that, because I think that I think that this number two guy that we want to put opposite of DK Metcalf is so much more important than the slot guy, because I mean we can get Calvin Austin cheap, and like we can get that, but I think that this number two guy needs to be top priority, and I would like Fields over the other two, just archetype speaking.
Okay. I don't know if I necessarily align with that exact thought process, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with either of our ideas, and it kind of is just like whatever Mike McCarthy kind of wants to do. You know, what does he want this offense to be? Maybe it would benefit him to have two DK Metcalfs on the field, for lack of a better word, and then you kind of have, you know, your Calvin Austin type slot guy in there, and also implementing guys like Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington in there as well. I mean, this could be just bully ball if we get all these big guys that are 6'4" and 250 pounds. Like that sounds like it's something that we could be doing. And, you know, for the way that you're thinking about this, you know, we talked about the West Coast offense, and, you know, you're probably better prepared to talk about this than me, but do you think these bigger wide receivers fits that West Coast offense idea more, that's more run heavy to start, that would maybe implement more blocking wide receivers? Does that track? I mean, that's me asking you, actually.
I do think so. I think that, like, I think when we talk about the West Coast offense for Mike McCarthy's intro, I always go back to the 49ers. And the two receivers that stick out is Jerry Rice and Jonathan Taylor, who are both, like, you know, tall guys. Jonathan Taylor, especially, was big bodied. And I think that they ran the system extremely well. And especially because, you know, they used the running back, they would use the tight end. I think that the big body archetype, if we're gearing towards West Coast, is where we want to go, and like what we want to aim for, if that's the offense that we're primarily wanting to run.
Okay. I like that idea. And that's an interesting little point, because I don't know if Malachi Fields necessarily projects as a first round wide receiver. I've seen a lot of different projections for him. I've seen him in the first round. I've also seen him dropping into the second round. So he's one of those guys that I don't know exactly where he slots. And frankly, his production hasn't necessarily indicated that he's like a first round wide receiver. You know, he's not fast, but he's huge. I mean, he's just absolutely massive. And I watched a couple of Notre Dame games this year, and like his wingspan vertically specifically is just, it's unfathomable how tall he can make himself. So
Yeah.
you've got two of these guys essentially that it's like, okay, you've got two DK Metcalfs on the field. What does that do though for our route running capabilities? Because I think we've said in the past that Calvin Austin, while he is fast, he's not an exceptional route runner. So does that create problems for an Aaron Rodgers offense if we do bring him back? Is that kind of almost inhibiting us with our own selections here?
That's definitely a good point, because we do. Yeah, that's a great point, because route running should be our priority as well. And I think that, man, in an ideal world, we can maybe have both. But that is a good point. I would love to still have someone who can actually run a route well, because I mean, yeah, you go back to Aaron Rodgers, and like his heyday, you know, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams when he came in, like these guys, Greg Jennings, even like, or Donald Driver, like they got it done. They got the job done. And I think that that's the issues we've seen with Metcalf and Rodgers, is like Rodgers is like come on, like let's run a route. And I think that's actually happened with a lot of our receivers, like Roman Wilson and things like that. And so that is a good point. If we are for sure getting Rodgers back, we do need to make sure that we have route runners.
I think Pat Freiermuth can kind of pick up a little bit of that slack, because for a tight end, he is a good route runner. But again, the capabilities of a good tight end route runner, as opposed to like a little shifty, kind of quirky technician wide receiver, it's very different. So for the make of this offense, my personal desire would be to get a guy that can that can sit in the slot, that can do a lot of different things. And interestingly, Casey Concepcion, he was marketed as like an all-purpose guy. He can do a lot of different things. He's smaller. He's not a big guy. I think he's 5'11", maybe 195 pounds. So he's not huge, but he was a 3-time first-team All-SEC. He was a slot guy, and they say he's got a very high IQ, which, again, with the way that our low IQ wide receivers have been historically, the words high IQ kind of just rings a bell in my mind, and I get excited about that type of prospect. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I definitely like the high IQ thing, and the first team All-Pro SEC 3 times sticks out for sure. And I think that Antonio Brown was 5'11", and he might have weighed less than that. And so I think that I wouldn't, based off kind of the resume you've given me, that sounds like a pretty good resume and could be better fit for a route runner and a guy, if he can really do it all. I mean, that would sound like a really good match for specifically if Aaron Rodgers ran it.
And it sounds like that he would be projected around where the Steelers would pick. It seems like he's projected to be a late first-round wide receiver. If we were to go after Mekhi Lemon, it seems like we would have to trade up just a few picks because I don't think he'll be there when our pick comes around at 21. Like I said, with Malachi Fields, I don't know exactly where he's going to slot. But Casey Concepcion is kind of one of those middle guys that it might just make too much sense not to take him. And I've even seen some, excuse me, oh, shoot. Josh, I've been sick all this week, so I apologize for that. But he's been one of those guys that, like a lot of mock drafts have had him going to the Steelers. So, and I can't think of too many times, maybe outside of one mock draft I saw last year where we got Derek Harmon. I don't see a lot of times where we're taking guys that we have seen in a lot of mock drafts. I feel like we kind of do our own thing. I mean, Troy Fatanu was certainly not one of those guys. Broderick Jones, I don't think, was one of those guys. So this would kind of break the mold. I mean, it would break the mold in a lot of ways because first off, we don't take wide receivers in the first round. And second off, we don't take people that people think we should take. So this would kind of be an interesting little tidbit here, you know?
Yeah, and I think that would be a bit refreshing. Like instead of trying to be like, nah, we're smarter than everybody. We got this whole master plan. It's like, no, like yeah, like this guy's great, and you guys think we're gonna take him, we're gonna take him. And like I think that that's great. And so I think we need to take a wide receiver first round, obviously. And it sounds like this guy would be a great fit. I would be content with the two of them, just not Mekhi Lemon, just because I don't know. I'm not a USC fan at all, and I don't know. I got a bad feeling about what I've read about him.
Okay, that's interesting. And oddly enough, I had heard some negative stuff about Concepcion, and then when I was doing a little research before this, I was looking at him like, I don't know where I saw this stuff from. It seems like this guy like has a genuine heart, that he's smart, that he's got a good football IQ. I don't know what negative stuff I was consuming about this guy previously. I at some point I think I had seen that he was a head case, and immediately with the Steelers' history, I'm like, okay, heck no, I'm not doing that anymore. But a little bit of the research that I was doing just before we got on, it seems like this is a good guy and a high IQ guy. And again, when I hear high IQ and wide receiver, I'm just like, gimme. I can't get enough of that, you know, because we know the history of our wide receivers and some of their low IQ moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely could just use a good person at the wide receiver. And maybe I'll look into Lemon a little bit more and try and figure out, because maybe I just read the headline, the one article, and maybe he is a better guy. But yeah, I think that's very encouraging. And it's like, that's the kind of guy, like we need to focus when we're drafting a wide receiver on off the field just as much as we're focusing on the field, because we've seen what happens when we're just like, forget about all the red flags. Just take him because he's good on the field.
Yeah. This is the point where we need to stop. We have to stop overlooking the red flags, just like you said. It can't happen anymore. And honestly, now under a new regime, I feel like there's more incentive to do that than maybe previously, because you figure Mike Tomlin had an unbelievable track record of getting rid of wide receivers just before they absolutely crashed out. So now it's like Mike Tomlin, that era, it was, I'll take this guy, I'll get the most out of him, and then I'll get rid of him before he really ruins himself. Mike McCarthy might not stand for that at all. He might just be like, let's go after the good guys that are like legitimate guys. I mean, you think about guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, he's not in the news for any like stupid reasons. He seems like a decent guy, and he was probably the best wide receiver in the NFL this last year. So why can't we go out and get a guy like that, you know?
Right, exactly. And I think it's interesting because, yeah, Mike Tomlin was so good at that. And I think that even almost, like, we've talked about this a lot, but that's an indicator of, like, okay, like, that's just the proof that he can't develop. Like, and what a horrible coach that you're just like, all right, you're good right now. I'm going to take that, but I can't make it better. So get out of here once we're done. The only player he didn't do that with was Antonio Brown, because Antonio Brown was just insane. So, yeah, I would love for McCarthy to take the other route. I'd be like, I'm going to take this good guy, and he's good right now. We're going to make him better, you know?
Yeah, can't agree more. That development. And he said that. He said that exact word, and I will forever hold that over his head. He said the exact word, development.
Which is what we've been missing since 2006. So we need it.
Yes, we do. All right. Well, if you had to get your way, what would you do with this wide receiver situation? Obviously, we both said, let's bring back Sam Malu and let's bring back Kenneth Gainwell. What would you do with the wide receiver situation?
All right, if I could have the perfect world where it's just like everything fits into place, we get Alec Pierce in free agency. We bring him in. We draft Concepcion. And then we sign Austin real cheap to be the fourth guy, maybe even fifth guy, who knows. But then he's the primary returner. I feel like that would make me feeling the most confident going into the next year.
So that would be like an overhaul of the wide receiver room. This is like we are investing absolutely everything we have into the wide receivers this year. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that the guys that we have right now, besides Metcalf, hopefully, are not doing it. We got a bad taste in the mouth. Now, who knows? You know, we just said the word development. Like, McCarthy could turn these guys around and they could be something that we haven't seen them be in a Steeler jersey. But based off of what we've seen over the past however many years, I would like a fresh start.
I agree. And I think that based on the trends that I've seen, even in the aftermath of Mike Tomlin stepping down, it seems like fresh start is just the aura that we've got about this team right now. And I would be very refreshed with a fresh start. And I like that idea. Now, I don't know with what our cap space looks like if Alec Pierce is going to kind of ruin that situation. I don't know how much he's going to make. I don't know if I said this earlier. It looks like he's projected to make like $20 million in free agency, which makes no sense to me because, again, he's one of those guys that's like, he's been overshadowed by somebody else and he's been good, sure, but is he really worth that much money? I mean, you figure DK Metcalf's making close to $30 million or over $30 million this year. Is Alec Pierce, how much different is he than DK Metcalf? I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that, but unfortunately, it seems like we might have to commit a lot of our remaining cap to Alec Pierce, which if that's the case, then, you know, getting Concepcion behind that might not be possible. I don't know. If it is possible, I would do that in a heartbeat. And that's the question I asked. I said, if you could get your way, what would you do? You said that, and I would totally agree with that. If there was anything, I would say that exactly from my perspective too. I don't know if it's possible, but if it is, I'm smashing that button.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of an unfortunate free agency for us right now because I think about Alec Pierce and Kenneth Gainwell, both guys that are coming out and are both, like you would say, number twos. But because this free agency is so weak, like it's unfortunate that they might be getting paid as a number one or like close to a number one. And it's like, that's such a bummer because if there was just one or two number ones in both running back and wide receiver, these guys would not be, you know, projected, even though Kenneth Gainwell still is projected a little bit lower, they would not be where they are projection-wise if this free agency class was just a little bit better.
And again, I don't know if these projections are anywhere near accurate. I mean, this is just the one site that I went to. I didn't compare it with anything else necessarily. Now, I'll follow that up. Would Mike Evans be an okay substitution for Alec Pierce in this exact same scenario?
I think that, like, I know I said yes. I'd only say yes if Mike McCarthy felt like we could win a Super Bowl. Because it's like, again, it would seem fairly pointless if we got him and he retired the next year.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense because, again, like you said earlier, it seems like this is probably Mike Evans' last year, if he even plays. I mean, I don't even know if he'll play, but if he does, and we do get him instead of, say, a guy like Alec Pierce, again, that has to be the idea. And kind of the same reason that we got out or Aaron Rodgers this last year. You don't just go get Aaron Rodgers if you don't think you're going to try to compete for something. So if that's the case, I'd be okay with that. And again, I mean, I don't know if we're capable of that. That's the only problem with Mike Evans' situation is I don't think we can't just go 10 years without winning a playoff game and then just all of a sudden expect to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, even though a lot of teams have had some crazy turnarounds recently, I don't know if we're that team, and so I don't know if it's going to be worth it this year.
All right. So, all right, I'm going to read the offense for us. And with this specific situation, I want to get your opinion and see if this is a playoff caliber offense.
Okay.
For the offensive line, right to left, Troy Fautanu, Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier. You bring back Isaac Seumalo, and you keep Broderick Jones at left tackle. It's the exact same offensive line as this last year. Then, on one side, you've got DK Metcalf as your wide receiver 1. As your wide receiver 2, you have some comparison, or rather combination of Mike Evans or Alec Pierce, if you want to go that route in free agency. Then, KC Concepcion or Malachi Fields in that other spot. And then Pat Freiermuth or Darnell Washington in the tight end slot. Is that a good enough offense to pair enough with our defense to do something in the playoffs? And I forgot a couple of key pieces. Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell as our backfield, and then Aaron Rodgers, who, again, is most likely to be returning as our quarterback.
That's okay. That's real tough, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say yes. I think it can get us a playoff win because we were obviously a little worse off this year. We're hoping we're going to be a little better off, especially wide receiver wise. And we were, a quarter away in a close playoff game. We won the division with poor coaching and inadequate coaching, bad development, bad offensive scheme, and we were close to winning a playoff game. We were in the playoffs. So with good development, a good scheme, a good coach really running things, like why couldn't we win a playoff game?
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I'll take one piece out of this just because I'm a realist and I like to work in the real world. I get it. Ideally, we could get either Alec Pierce or Mike Evans and Concepcion. If you take out that free agent and Concepcion is your wide receiver 2, and you have DK Metcalf, KC Concepcion, and some iteration of Calvin Austin and maybe another just like smaller free agent like Scotty Miller type of guy, along with Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, does that move the needle enough?
I would lean towards no. I would lean towards it would need a little bit of time and maybe another piece. I feel like we just need a good trio that we haven't had in a while. And we just need a third stable guy. So without a third stable guy, I would be questionable. And yeah, I would say that I would be questionable.
I like the 1-2, but again, that hard drop off from 3. If the drop off wasn't nearly as hard, and if it was just like, okay, this is like a serviceable wide receiver 3, and again, nothing against Calvin Austin, but again, serviceable is a word. I don't know if it's the exact word that I would use to describe Calvin Austin. It's just an interesting situation, and that's almost the real situation that I could see happening this upcoming season. I think they might draft Concepcion. Maybe they don't get anybody else in free agency. Actually, while I'm on the subject, because I just looked at his name, would Christian Kirk be a decent enough wide receiver 3 if that's the route that you go to have behind Concepcion as your third guy?
I would probably prefer Wan'Dale Robinson over Christian Kirk.
Okay.
For number 3.
Okay. I don't know if that's possible based on, what the trends are with this free agent class, but if it is, then, maybe that's an option. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the question mark. So it's an interesting situation because there's a lot to get, and I don't know if we necessarily have all the resources to get it all, but it's almost like if you don't get it all, then you're bound and determined to have another 10-7, 9-8 type of season.
I agree, and I think it's like you said, like the draft, the wide receiver room is deep. So if we got to take 2 guys, we can take 2 guys, and if we got to sign another, like I think we do just need to make that change so that it looks different, and that we have 3 solid guys.
Yep, I agree. Now, one more name that I mentioned just one time in this episode, but it's an interesting little kind of Swiss Army knife. Connor Hayward. What do you think about bringing him back?
I'm indifferent.
Okay.
I'm actually not indifferent. I'm okay with not. I don't really know where he fits, especially if we get these other receivers. I don't know where he fits. We have Freiermuth in Washington, and maybe he's a good depth guy, and we get him cheap, so I'm fine with that, but we don't need to chase him down.
No more tush pushes.
No. Yeah, no.
All right. Well, that's our offense episode for this upcoming 2026 offseason. The draft is coming up in just over a month or so that'll be something to consider. Free agency is going to open up here pretty soon, and we're going to start to see the dominoes fall. So it's interesting. We talked about a lot in this episode, but again, we appreciate you listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, which is always sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, Crafting Furniture Solutions in Northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. Any final thoughts, David?
I think that, with new leadership and everything, I think that even though I feel like our outlook sometimes of these future things aren't the most positive, I think we could stay positive and be hopeful that we're going to put together some pieces that can work well.
And honestly, I like the options. I mean, I feel like we have more better options this time around than we did last year, because I don't remember this conversation being nearly as fruitful last year around this time, personally.
Oh, I completely agree.
Well, that's our running back, wide receiver, tight end, all the offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers that we've got going on in the 2026 offseason. We'll see what happens. Heck, maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't our quarterback and all of this doesn't even make any sense. Maybe we do stuff that we're not expecting to do, and probably we won't, because, again, the Steelers they're very petty, and they don't do what a lot of people think that they should do. But regardless, we appreciate you listening to this episode of Boardman Black and Gold. Thanks as always, myself, Zane, joined by David DeSantis. We'll see you next time for some trivia.